In the Heights, directed by John M. Chu, music and story by Lin-Manuel Miranda. And just a disclaimer before we start, I was in a production of In the Heights my freshman year of high school. Jack and Daniel saw it. We've listened to it all our lives at this point. We know it. We love it. We will have opinions about this movie based on the fact that we know the musical so well. And, we'll talk about it and have some fun. But let's just open up with some quick thoughts about this movie.
You know what? This is like a weird one, and I've been like trying to figure out like what my actual thoughts are about this film in the last 48 hours. And I don't know, because I like every individual piece of it I enjoy. Like, I thought all the actors were terrific in it. I thought all the musical numbers were very good in it. And yet at the end of the day, the movie just like fell kind of flat for me. And I wonder how much of that is our familiarity with the show and it not living up to our expectations of it, and how much is because it just frankly was not a wonderful movie. And at the end of the day, it's probably both.
Yeah, no, I certainly agree. Like you said, Tyler, we've been listening to this cast album for years. Every time I do anything, I'm listening to In the Heights or Hamilton. And so kind of, I said this to you, Jack, last night, because we went to go see it in theaters, which was really fun. We both watched it on Friday on HBO Max in our living rooms. And then we watched it last night in the theater. And it was definitely a different experience, but the issues still remain the same, regardless of the loudness of the volume or the size of the picture. But I've been directing this movie in my head since I was a freshman in high school. So I think in a lot of ways, I'm having a little bit of trouble sort of deciphering what is my director brain and what is my just regular audience goer brain. The first time I was watching it, I was really struggling with like, I don't know about that choice. I don't know about this choice. I don't know about that musical number. I don't know about the staging of this or that. And I was kind of picking it apart like that because I had run it through my own head so many times, directing it so many times every time I had listened to it over the last however many years. Second time we watched it, when we watched it in theaters, that stuff sort of went away. I was able to kind of just like adjust to some of the changes, and I was allowing myself to accept it. And yet still, there's just character and plot stuff that I frankly just don't think works. And we will break down this movie as it exists as a movie by itself, because that's what we should do. But also, you can't not compare it to the original, because there are things that they do in the original Broadway show that they don't do in the movie that would have served the movie a lot better, I think.
Daniel, I totally agree with, I've been directing this movie in my head for a long time. Kenny Ortega was actually supposed to direct a version of this movie like way back in the day. Like, I want to say like 2012 or 2013 or something. And John M. Chu is not like a horrible choice or anything. He did like the Step Up movies. I thought Crazy Rich Asians was a lot of fun. I think that movie's like really well directed and has, ironically, I think it has more life than this movie does, because at the end of the day, I feel like this is a Disney-fied version of In the Heights in a weird way. It feels like kind of mechanical, kind of robotic. There is clearly a lot of love for In the Heights, but just like the marketing behind this film, there's just a lot of head-scratching moments in it, and I think a lot of it comes down to not the music or anything, but like the plot, like the main plot that they like completely rewrote. Pretty much like almost every character like starts the same and ends the same, but like how they get there is like completely different. Like from Usnavi, Nina, Vanessa, and like Benny just doesn't have anything really. He has like one or two things.
Benny's one of the biggest casualties. Yeah.
But yeah, where do we want to hop into? Those were kind of my overall thoughts, and then leading into some more specific stuff. I definitely think I can speak for all of us when we said it was a mixed bag. I know there's like two numbers I really loved, and then the rest of it just kind of fell flat. But yeah, where do you guys want to start? We can start with a good thing. I think Anthony Ramos was great.
Yeah, for sure. That's the thing. Like Jack said, there's so many positive elements, but there is something that just feels kind of inauthentic. again, it's like, it's sort of, I don't know, like I feel so disappointed that I'm coming out the gate like this, because I wanted to love this movie more than anybody. I love Lynn. I love the team behind this movie. I like all the individual pieces, but it's just not working. But I think you're right to start with the positive stuff. And Anthony Ramos is certainly the biggest winner probably out of this movie, because he is so charismatic, unbelievable in the scenes with Vanessa. I think, a big change is that they centralize Usnavi more as the main character in the movie than they did in the show. And a byproduct of that is that the relationship between him and Vanessa is a little bit more, it's more the A plot romance than it was in the
Which
in the
I
show.
don't have a problem with that in theory.
Right, in theory.
Like them trying to centralize it more. I don't think that's necessarily a bad idea. I just think, like, we briefly mentioned Benny, and that's kind of what he was in this movie, was kind of like a brief afterthought. And I think that was one of the casualties of it, like you said, that ended up not working because of that decision, which wasn't a bad decision.
In the show, the true love story of In the Heights is Benny and Nina. Like, that was always the one true love story. And I always felt like Usnavi and Vanessa was just kind of like, a fun romance. It wasn't like this great love story that spanned, time and oceans and stuff. By centralizing Usnavi and Vanessa, which is, like you said, Jack, not a bad idea on the page. By doing that, one of the things that you get are some of the most incredibly charming performance moments in the entire movie, where Usnavi is just like, or I guess I should just say Anthony Ramos is just like super goofy and like laughing uncomfortably because he's such a dork. And like, I thought those moments were unbelievable, super stellar, and so realistic. And those are the performance moments that really shine through. And Anthony Ramos is particularly adept at those sorts of things. And so I think, I don't want to say it's an upgrade from Lynn in the show, but like, it definitely is more of the movie star version.
The way I heard Lynn describe it in one interview is he said that he played Usnavi, but Anthony is Usnavi. And like that like, I kind of felt that in this whole show. He was just wonderful in it. Like, he really embodied the character. He's like so easy to like root for, and every time he's on camera, you just like, you're drawn to him. His voice is also incredible. Unfortunately, like, this is not the show that shows it off the best. But yeah, I love the moments with him and Vanessa. Specifically, like, one I'm thinking of is like when at the party when they're in Abuela's kitchen.
Yes.
And they're talking about how they have a date tonight. I thought that was just a real cute thing.
Yeah, it's cute. That's exactly how to describe it. Like, he is cute in this movie. He's charming, he's lively, and he's fun, and he's everything that you kind of wanted Usnavi to be. And it makes sense that he is the main character with the level of performance that Anthony Ramos brings.
Yeah, totally. He can sing, he can dance, he can act. He's really charming in this, and I agree with everything you guys said.
One thing that I like that they were able to do in the film version, which is something you can do in movies that doesn't translate well in like stage productions, is going to more locations and getting off of just like the one little corner that they're on. I do like that, and I liked how they utilized that throughout the film. I thought getting to the pool for $96,000 was just a very cool thing to do.
It felt like an old like musical, it's like, oh, here's the big set piece at like a community pool or at a pool or something,
Yeah, I just thought it was fun that they were able to go do more things, and I thought it was smart of them to utilize that as they could.
And one particular moment where I think they utilize that as well, and it works really effectively, is when Nina is singing about like, she like flashes back and she's like, she would stay up on the fire escape. It goes back in time, and Jimmy Smits is like giving her a computer, and like they're doing that little montage and they go through. And I like that. I liked the opportunity to jump back and forth through time. I don't think they utilized it a ton, but when they did, I found it to be quite a moving choice.
Do we have anything else like good we want to say? Like, obviously there's a lot there, and like
Abuela.
Yeah, let's talk about Abuela
Claudia
for a little bit.
Olga, she was great. Loved her. Was in the original
Broadway cast, played the same character. She kills it. Paciencia Fe was my favorite number. I think it's incredibly choreographed. I think it's a lot of fun. I think there's a lot of beautiful colors in it. I don't like where it comes. Like, okay, like I hate to like talk like talk about bad stuff when we're still like kind of in the good stuff. So like I'll save my comments for later, but I did really like Abuela in this. But I do have some problems with like the tweaks they did with her character.
No, we'll get to that because I think that was kind of like the turning point.
Yeah, definitely.
Of the film. But I'm just a sucker for grandma characters, I think, because of my relationship with my own grandma. But Olga was fantastic in this. And she deserves all the praise in the world because she just absolutely killed it.
Yeah, I think the older generation in this film, very good. I thought that the everything that Abuela is doing is amazing. Olga did an amazing job. I really, really thought Jimmy Smits was on a whole nother planet. I thought he was doing some really impressive acting in this film. They changed the Kevin Rosario character a little bit because in the Broadway show, he's kind of more of a hard ass. He's kind of just like a little bit more stubborn, a bit more rigid, and he's like a little bit more of an asshole, honestly. In this one, Jimmy Smits is like so kind, even when he gets mad at the scene where they're having like lunch together. When he and Nina are having lunch, he like hits his hand on the table, which is such a cliche. We got to stop doing that in movies, by the way. But he hits his hand on the table.
No more hands hitting tables.
Yeah, it's like a high point of the conversation, blah, 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 and then he hits the table, and then it goes quiet, and it's like, oh, snap. But then even then, when he's mad, he gets up. He composes himself and he's like, you can't tell me how much I can afford. You're not the parent. And then he smiles and kisses her and says, God bless you. And then he leaves. And it's like a really sweet and tender moment. Every time he has the opportunity to get really angry, especially during the dinner scene later also, he pulls back and you see that really true love that he has for Nina. And I think that's just a really talented actor really knocking it out of the park. I think a lot of that was what he brought to it, as opposed to what the character probably was on the page.
Always shout out to Jimmy Smits.
Always shout out to Jimmy Smits.
Major
I think what
shout-outs.
we're trying to say is that like everyone in this film was great. Like I thought all the performances were really good. Corey Hawkins as Benny was very good with what they gave him. Melissa Barrera as Vanessa was great.
So good.
I thought everyone did a really good job. So then the question becomes, why didn't this movie work?
Yes. Let's do it. All right. To make this movie better, we should have directed it. I'm just kidding. No.
And they should have paid us.
Yeah, they should have paid us a lot. No. Okay, so
they can pay us now.
it just really drags. The second half really does drag, like just as a movie on its own, not even comparing it to the original Broadway production. I think it just kind of starts to drag once Paciencia Fe is over. Here's what it is. I feel like the second half of the movie is a completely different movie. For two reasons. One, the energy completely shifts because of some structural changes that they made in terms of when certain songs and when certain beats come. And then additionally, you have the Sonny green card subplot, which was not originally in the Broadway show. That feels incredibly tacked on. It's an extremely important subject matter to tackle in a movie, but it does feel like they were writing the movie and then Trump was elected and then they wrote a second draft of the second half of the movie. It feels like it comes out of nowhere. It becomes the catalyst for multiple characters doing things that they want to do. And ultimately, it sort of is the D plot. And a lot of the important stuff that had been building then intertwines with that D plot and sort of brings everything down a level. For example, 96,000. In the original show, Usnavi gets this money and it's his ticket out of here. We'll come back to that. In this one, he uses it to help pay for the green card fees and for trying to fight in court. Also, Nina decides to go back to college, not really so much because of Abuela Claudia like she did in the Broadway show, but because of what what Sonny says to her when they're at that rally. He's like, I wanted to be like you. And so she realizes, I should go back to college to help out undocumented kids. That comes out very ham-fisted in the scene with her and her father. Just a number of things that the plot had been building towards all end up like coming back to the Sonny thing. And I just didn't think that the Sonny thing worked at all. So I think that's one of the core reasons structurally and character-wise that like the second half just kind of dragged for me.
And also just how they restructured most of the songs, like how, and again, sorry, we're comparing so much, but I think this is important.
We got to stop apologizing for that because it's not saying
you're right,
that.
I apologize.
It's not saying that this was done better in, the stage version. It's saying that the movie didn't do this thing, and it's not even I think really comparing it. It's that like the stage version made plot decisions that worked and the movie made ones that didn't.
Yeah.
And the decisions were made in the stage version because they did work, and I don't know why they were made in this one.
Yeah, and in the Broadway show, Paciencia Fe is pretty early, and you learn a lot about Abuela Inutil is pretty early. You learn a lot about Kevin. You learn about all these characters through their songs.
Yeah.
And you see them as like who they really are. I'll say that. And like, I feel like by the second half, you don't know anything about any character besides maybe Usnavi
and Vanessa. I'd say
Usnavi and Vanessa are the only ones you know.
Yeah.
About.
Yeah, exactly. And like, again, there's more added with Vanessa in this one. Like Vanessa, there's just a whole subplot of her like being a fashionista in this, which is like, I guess, yeah, more interesting than it is in the Broadway show.
Yeah.
I don't think she had like anything really. She was just kind of a catalyst for Usnavi. You're learning about all these characters too late. And like, by the time the second half comes around, you're like, I don't know. I don't know Benny at all. I barely know Nina. Abuela just sung about herself and then died, so I guess I kind of knew her, but she's dead now.
Yeah.
And just like those things don't hit like they do in the stage version.
Benny and Nina. Let's just start there arbitrarily.
Sure.
I think everything that is being set up there is pretty good. I did not care for the decision to have them already have been dating before she left. I thought that was kind of a weird, unnecessary choice. And then once we get When You're Home, that's, pretty good. I didn't totally love the number itself and the way it was staged, but it was fine. It was good. And then once we get to the club or I guess the dinner scene before the club, that's where things start to break off with Benny and Nina, where things start to change from the show and they start to become just substantially less interesting in the movie, because in the show, they have a little breakup moment where he's really mad at her because of what happened with Rosario's, and he's kind of blaming her.
Because Daddy's selling the business for her.
Exactly. And so he's pissed, and so they break up, and they're both at the club. He's pissed, she's pissed. And then at the end of Blackout, they, like you said, Tyler, you mentioned this already, but they find each other, and they have this incredibly beautiful climactic moment, and it's a stunning emotional moment in the show. And in the movie, instead, they're fine the whole way through. And then all of a sudden, Benny decides he really cares about his job, and that's his character. And then he's like, I'm going to go help out. And which is an admirable choice as a person. But like,
I think it's a cool thing if they hint at it earlier, if they make it more established that like Benny's a hard working guy who really loves this job and will do anything for his community.
Right. And that's why it was also weird when he comes into the dinner scene and he's like, hey, what's going on? I'm really like bothered by this. I'm totally rattled. I've been playing it over in my head many, many times. I just didn't buy, like, why are you so upset about this? Like, it seems like you're just like, I don't know, you're just like a guy. I don't know you. So this is so strange.
Yeah. There's also like, I'm not sure if this was in the movie. I don't think it was. Like there's like a really like interesting subplot in the show where like Benny is like an outsider with all the other main characters, because he's like,
it's a key component of his story in the
great
show.
point.
Yeah. And like, they don't touch on it. Like, that's why him and Kevin are so like back and forth, because Kevin's like, you're not Latino, you like don't deserve Nina and stuff, and like it's about
you're not part of our community, you don't.
Exactly. And it's like I feel like they cut that out because they're like, we can't do that to like a black lead, you know what I mean? We can't like make him like not be a part of this community. He has to just be in the community. But I think that's like a really interesting and relatable part of his story in the show. And I think that's why also Benny just doesn't work in this movie, because he has nothing like that.
That's a absolutely fantastic point that I had forgotten about. Yeah, his otherness is the singular thing, and that's also a huge part of why they have that little break off before Blackout, because like, yeah, that the relationship with Kevin is just it sucks. Kevin sucks in the show, but he's too nice in the movie. In the movie, he's just so sweet. You can't imagine him being like, you're not a part of this community. And there's, sorry,
I just want to say this cute little scene from that they cut out, I think sunrise. Not when the sun, they still have when the sun goes down, they cut out sunrise, which is like the opening of Act 2. And there's just this cute little moment where like Nina's teaching Benny like Spanish.
Yes.
And it's just kind of like, it like reminds you like, oh, it's like, that's a cute little character moment and cute little thing they do together. But again, Nina and Benny are kind of like just a couple in this, and there's no tension there.
And then, additionally, no, that's a great point. Additionally, because that is something this movie lacks, is I feel like it really loses character while going for spectacle. And I think that's just a larger issue that we'll come back to. But finishing up with the Benny and Nina stuff, I I mentioned already, Nina's decision to go back to college felt very quick. It was just like a really fast decision. Her decision to leave school too, I disliked a little bit, because in the show, she just was having a really tough time. Like she just kind of couldn't handle it. She just, she's the genius in Washington Heights, but when she goes to Stanford, she's just everyone else. And I thought that was extremely compelling.
And she's working 2 jobs in the show because she doesn't want daddy to have to worry so much about the money.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
And that's why she's behind on her classes and pressure. And
yeah, it's just enormous pressure.
That is so utterly relatable of like, leaving your hometown and going to college in like a big university. Like you feel like such a small fish. And like, that's just, again, completely out of... Yeah, like when they're at that dinner scene and she's like, I got searched. And everyone's like, oh, whoa.
First of all, I was like, oh, I hope that this isn't going like as far, because I didn't quite understand the context because I'm, a white guy. So, but clearly everyone around the table understood immediately like what that meant. And so I kind of freaked out. I was like, oh, this seems heavy. This seems really heavy. And then it still is heavy, obviously. That's a major microaggression, or I guess just a flat out aggression, of racial bias. Yeah. And it's definitely something that would traumatize a person if your like white yuppie roommate was like, hey, I think you stole something from me. We're going to get everybody involved. That would suck. That would absolutely suck, and is reason enough to want to leave school. But I thought it was sacrificing all of the interesting stuff that comes with the original show in order to talk about, again, important subject matter, but stuff that just wasn't in the Heights before. It was enough to have everybody in the community singing "We Are Powerless" during blackout. It didn't need to be as explicitly stated like it is in the movie. I think the movie just takes what was sort of subtle and kind of blows it up to a bigger proportion.
And I think this is like a main problem that we'll get back to, like just throughout like our issues with the film. And it's like they sacrifice the simplicity and relatability of a lot of the subplots for like bigger problems in the US like over the last like 4 years, which like again on paper that sounds really good and interesting, but like in practice it's kind of like but why do you have to make things more complicated? Like why couldn't it have been a small story? Because like that is what like a neighborhood is. It's like a small story. It's not like these big ramifications.
No, but I think that's a great point. This show, it goes bigger than it needs to. I think it goes bigger in the musical numbers than it needs to. Again, they sacrifice character in order to achieve spectacle. I think the opening number is very good. I did not love 96,000. It does feel more like a music video, sort of pop music video sort of thing to me than it feels more like Step Up, It feels more like some of the other movies that John M. Chu has done. I kind of liked Carnaval del Barrio. It was, the song is just such a banger that you can't not like it. But there's a number of moments that I was just like, I would love to just pull back and focus on a single character in this moment. I feel like they kind of get lost in the weeds.
I'd love to talk about musical numbers for a bit and musicals. I think something that really works for me personally with musical numbers, like I think La La Land is a mixed bag of a movie, but I think something that's incredible about that movie is the musical numbers, because they feel effortless. They feel like they're on stage, and they just feel like so well choreographed. Like with this, I think it's heavily edited. It's like honestly
they try
hard.
To do too much on some of them. Like some of the like magical realism stuff, I'm kind of over. Especially like when the sun goes down, I'm like so over people dancing on like the side of buildings and stuff. I feel like I've just seen it so many times that like it's something that's not interesting to me anymore.
Yeah. And I did like that number, but I think that idea would have worked better with When You're Home, because it's like Nina, because I originally, when I saw the trailer, I'm like, oh, that's When You're Home.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
Because it's like the idea of being like in zero gravity when you're back home and you have your community and it's like everything's effortless. And like I think that would have worked way better in When You're Home. But I
also didn't like that because they decided to fast forward a month. They had to reframe that song by saying, let's imagine that it's summer again.
Yeah.
The whole timer thing that they put on the thing was just weird to me throughout. They started off, they're like 3 days until the blackout. I'm like, why don't you just let the blackout happen? And it's a much bigger surprise then.
Yeah, it's like we know the blackout's coming. But anyways, what I was saying about like musical numbers and stuff, like I think spectacle works best when you can tell what's happening and it's played to the camera. And I feel like a lot of this, instead of working at like a normal like audience is here, we're here, it's like it keeps going back and forth between like different places. Like that's why I don't think Carnaval del Barrio worked, because like it's the camera's working in a 360 way. And I don't think musicals work well in that. I think musicals are performative, and like you should have like like the 180 rule, you know, like that fucking rule that we all talk about. Like there should be a 180 rule constantly in musicals. And I don't think, again, it's John M. Chu's vision, and I'm sure he made exactly what he wanted to make. But for me, I feel like that's what was lacking in the musical numbers. And I think the one musical number that kind of plays like that is Paciencia y Fe, and that's why I like it a lot.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I think there is a three-dimensionality to this movie that, you know, when you say three-dimensional, it sounds like a compliment. But in this regard, I agree with you, Tyler. I do think, you know, one of the best moments in La La Land, I guess we're going to use that as our reference point, but one of the best moments is when they're up on that hill, the two lights and the bench. They're just working on the bench. They're dancing on that bench and hopping up and down and going back and forth, and the camera just, you know, it stays on them, and it's motivated by character, and there's something so magical and beautiful, and you feel like these people are falling in love. And I never felt that during this movie. You know, I was charmed by Anthony Ramos's performance when during the non musical number scenes. So I felt that he was in love with Vanessa, but I didn't feel the magic, you know, through the songs necessarily. And you know, also with the magical realism stuff, them dancing on, you know, Benny and Nina dancing on the side of the building at the end doesn't work, because they took what was the A plot romance of the show and turned it into the B plot romance. So it's no longer the great love story that it was in the show. If this was the great love story,
the love story that has magical powers.
Yes, exactly. If this was the love story that had magical powers to allow that to happen, it would hit really differently. But instead, we don't know who these people are that well. I feel like I wasn't able to grasp hold of anything in this movie. It was all shiny plastic.
Yeah, and again, it's like that's why their relationship is so interesting, is because Nina's running away from a place that makes her feel like Benny, if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
Well put, yeah.
Like an outsider. And that's like, again, that's good writing. And that's like, but it's just interesting, like how we break down like why something we loved isn't making us feel that way. But I will say, I'm glad it does make people like, because people are raving about this film. People love it, and you know, more power to them. It just feels like to us, I feel like the heart is sucked out of it a bit. And like, again, there's some little stuff that I literally could like pick little things. Like I think Hundreds of Stories is like one of my favorite songs in the original Broadway show. It's not in this movie because Abuela would have been dead for like Abuela would have been a rotting corpse at that point in the film. Let's just say.
Let's talk about that
once
you're
done. That's like an important song though too. That like gives us more of like what Usnavi's want is.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
In this.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Instead of going through that in song, they choose to like a small scene, like when Kevin's talking about his father being a farmer. It's like he had a whole ballad about that,
right,
in the original.
And it was an awesome song, and I sing it all the time in the shower. First, I'll just talk about Abuela and her death. I hate, with a capital HATE. I hate when characters in movies die and it's made to be a choice. I hate that. I hate it so much. I hate that she, because when she sings that song in the Broadway show, it ends with the big surprise of, I won this ticket. What do you do when your dreams come true? This is amazing. Like I just became
that line is the best line in the whole show. Ay, mama, what do you do when your dreams come true? I spent my life inheriting dreams from you. But what do I do
with this winning ticket?
And the whole emotion behind that gets lost in this one.
Completely. Because, yeah, it's just like, I survived. I've lived this long. Now do I die or do I stay? And she literally looks backwards and then forwards. I thought it was way too literal. And then she says, ay, mama, okay, paciencia y fe. And then she walks up those stairs and she dies. And it's like, I hate that. I really
also doesn't make sense also, because it means like patience and faith, and it's like she just gives up. She's not patient anymore. She's like, fuck it, I'll die.
To me, the meaning of like it in the show is that, you know, she worked hard her whole life and she had patience and faith, and then she, you know, won this great prize. And in this one, she worked hard her whole life, she had patience and faith, and then she died.
Yeah, it's a bummer. And Lynn has talked about this and used this in raps before also. Like, in real life, Abuela never really won the lotto. But that's what's so beautiful about the show is like it, because everyone's talking about this movie as like the movie we need right now. It's so positive and so warm and so lovely, and it's the thing that's getting people back in theaters, and it's a representation of what we need now: community, beauty, love, hope, all that stuff. I don't totally see that in the Broadway show. I do see that because yeah, Abuela, she doesn't win the lottery in real life, but in the show she does. And then unfortunately she dies, but it still is she's able to live on, and that money is able to go to Usnavi and to Sunny, and they're able to take her legacy on. And in this show, she just dies, and it undercuts the magic of what was Blackout in the original show. And then on top of that, they delay the gratification of finding out about the winning lottery ticket until the very end, and then it pays off for the D plot. So like I think none of it works. None of it works at all.
I remember after our TL's rendition of In the Heights, like I was talking to my stepmom about the play, and she was like, yeah, like that whole ending of Act 1 was so much from the club to Blackout.
Yes.
Like that is a lot. That is like 10 to 15 minutes of straight music, of straight people like being like, open this door, like we're in the club, Vanessa, let me fuck you. Shit like that. I mean, that's what it is. And then, you know, you get that kiss at the end, and then you're like, oh, okay, fine. But in this, it's literally 4 songs in a row. Mm-hmm. It's the club, Blackout, Paciencia Fe, Abuela dies, and then they immediately go to Alabanza.
That's right.
All in the span of one night. And it is just too much. And like, there's not the catharsis at the end because Alabanza is such a sad song. Mm-hmm. And they basically just cram like 20 minutes of the original Broadway show into 15. And like, it's kind of, again, it's like the film. It's like all of those parts are good, but it just together it's a little messy, and it's a lot. Well, I'm saying like it is a lot. It's also Abuela's entire like character arc in that 15-20 minutes. And there's like a really cool scene in the original Blackout where Abuela's like, look like we like take this bag of money, and he's like, I've never like seen this much money in my whole life. And it's like they have like that secret that's like really nice, and it's like you just see the camaraderie between them. And again, it's just like not really seen here. Also, does Usnavi, sorry, this is a tangent, but does Usnavi live with Abuela? Like
in this one, I think he does.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
was confused, and then she like goes into his store like 10 minutes later, and it's like, why didn't they just go together, or why didn't Usnavi just give her what she needed? Like, again, it just
yeah. So there's just like some stuff that's like, I don't know when this is happening, like how much time is there in the day, and like also I've never been clear on the character ages. Like Usnavi says that he's almost 30 in this one, which is good. But then if he and Benny are really good friends, does that mean that Benny's dating a 19-year-old girl? Or an 18-year-old girl?
Yeah, and why is Nina a 19-year-old at the club?
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, there's a lot of things. Yeah,
and that's all from the show. That's not the movie.
No,
yeah. And again, yeah, exactly. And you brought up an interesting point, though, where this is a trend in media that I've seen a lot over the years. And this is why I said this is a Disneyfication of In the Heights, because Disney movies, Disney live action remakes like Aladdin, The Lion King, Beauty and the Beast, they try to fix things that everyone like memed about in the original.
Great point.
I don't really care about all those questions. Like, Benny and Nina are the same age, you know, like shit like that. It's like, but like in this, they feel like specifically they need to address it. And that's why like it's a Disneyfication of In the Heights. That's been my TED Talk. Thank you.
So we spent a lot of time talking about Abuela and about Benny and Nina. I kind of want to go back to Usnavi and Vanessa, because we've talked about how they centralize that plot point. Or that romance, and they make Usnavi the main character. Makes sense. That's fine. It does end up, you know, kind of really damaging Benny as a character and really damaging Benny and Nina. But the one thing that this movie does a lot better than the show is Vanessa and Usnavi and them together. I think that all really worked for me. I was pretty good with all of that. I think also at the end of the Broadway show, Usnavi's about to leave, and Sonny and Graffiti Pete just like tagged the grate on the store, and that was like him being like, oh wow, this is beautiful. But instead in the movie, it's so much richer and so much deeper to have it coming from the character that he loves, you know. And so I think that was a very smart choice. And even though I'm not crazy about the idea that they end up becoming married and having a child, you know, I never thought that was their relationship. Even though I'm not crazy about that, I do think that it all was well put together, well established, well thought out, and interesting. All of that stuff worked for me.
Well, yeah, and I will say, I think in the Broadway show, like, it does end pretty abruptly. Like, I feel like everyone's always like, wait, that's the end of the show? Like, and I mean, as someone who loves the ending of In the Heights, I love that it's not like a cute little bow at the end like it is in the film version, but like I understand why they did it, of course. Sure. And I don't think it's a problem, but I just like the idea of like a character's arc being like, no, this is my home, and like the girl I like, I'm gonna ask her out on a second date. And it's like it doesn't have to be
married.
A big thing.
I'm gonna go on a second date with her.
Yeah, baby steps.
I'm gonna end up getting married and having a child with her.
Again, it's that idea of like an infinite amount of possibilities for Usnavi at the end of that, because he's staying home, not because he's going back to a home that was like his family's. But like here, it's like he gets the girl and like he has a kid.
But how funny would it have been though if when she's like, go in the water and he's like, go and ask your mother, and it's like Kuka.
Yeah, I know, it's like someone else. It's like, yeah, it's like Kuka throwing it back. Like she does the whole movie.
That's all
my
Kuka's
mom
character
said
is.
All Kuka does in this movie is shimmy.
That's it. That's all Kuka.
It's like like fucking in the audition, she was just like, hey, and they're like,
apparently from what I've read, they just really enjoyed the actress and just wrote a role for her in it, which like, okay, cool. But
I mean, it's just a weird thing. Again, this is such a nitpick, but in the opening where he goes, Daniela, Carla, and then there's a long ass pause and he goes, and that's Kuka. It's like, okay, I know, Dan, you wanted to bring something up, but can we talk about the framing device of this film and like Usnavi telling a story to the kids?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's do it.
It just adds another layer. Again, it's like that thing I was saying earlier where like it takes the simple idea of Usnavi narrating to you because he is just like the local guy. And he's like, what if he's like talking to kids though in what you think is the Dominican Republic?
But then he also talks to you still throughout the thing. So like they didn't make a decision on what they wanted to do. They had him be the narrator, but of like to the audience, but also to his kids.
Right, he's the narrator in
time.
Present time and in the future. Yeah, he's doing a dual narration sort of thing. Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, and I don't think it. Yeah, because like again, sometimes when he's rapping the opening, it's like he's narrating to you, the audience, and then he's also just narrating to the kids. Like he's like, "I'm gonna test you later."
Right.
Yeah, he says that in like the same line. He like looks at us, and then in like the next shot is of him looking at the kids and be like, "I'm gonna test you later."
Which, if they're trying to draw the parallel to the audience being children, I am thoroughly offended. You already basically hit this perfectly, but yeah, it's no longer the day in the life of this community in Washington Heights. It's now the story of the day in the life of. It's just adding extra layers that I think are unnecessary. Framing devices like that, it works if you're Mary Shelley writing Frankenstein. I think that's sick. I think the framing device of Frankenstein is sick.
What a great novel.
Incredible. God bless everybody. This one, though, it's like it does feel more like hand-holding. It feels like they're trying to, guide you carefully and patiently and softly because we're children, because the movie is trying to say that we're children. The show is so grounded, and by placing us in the Dominican Republic right out the gate and then telling the story of the day in the life of, it just removes that grounded quality. And now it's like, I can't trust any of this. Now it's a story. It's not the life of. If that makes sense.
Imagine like Graffiti Pete, like an opening where Graffiti, like the credits are rolling and stuff, and Graffiti Pete's like going through the neighborhood and like tagging shit, And it's like kind of like a dance sequence. It shows off like Graffiti Pete as a character. And then Usnavi comes in and he's like, get out of here.
That's exactly how I wanted it to open as well. Yeah, because also That's the fun of the show also, is because Graffiti Pete's the one who's first on stage. He's dancing. It's cool. It's just like a fun little introduction. And then Usnavi comes on stage and everyone's like, oh, there's the main character. It's fun when the main character runs in, you know, jumps in and completely just jumps out at your face. But in this one, it's you spend so much time with Usnavi before the song starts, actually.
I want to talk about the lottery.
Yes, I was going to go there too. Yeah, perfect.
Wonderful. Totally. Because it like the lottery is supposed to be this like big important thing that ends up, you know, triggering Usnavi's ability to achieve his dream and get out of there and achieve what he wants. And in the film, he is able to achieve what he wants right after the first song, when this dude comes in and is like, you can buy your pop's old shop. And he's like, okay, cool. And then Usnavi got what he want just like that. And I think that's another problem we have here.
And because, you know, in terms of screenwriting or storytelling, you want the character to have a want that is not what they really want.
Want versus need, you know.
In the show, it's more obscure, like it's more obscured because we don't get that instant ability to make that decision. You know, in the movie, it's so obvious. He's like, well, I don't know. Yeah, I'm in. It's like, okay, you're not in. Like, but that's obscured throughout the show because he spends a whole act being like, I'm going to move to the Dominican Republic when I get my chance. And it's about getting that chance. And then when this magical thing happens, when he's able to get this money, yeah, that's when it happens. And it does bother me too, because it's like, you're telling me these people are getting priced out of their neighborhood when they all have life savings? Like, I joked about that with you last night, Jack.
He's got enough life savings to buy property in the Dominican Republic, which I don't know how much property costs there, but he has enough to like uproot his whole life and go somewhere else and like buy something there.
Yeah, and again, it like the original Broadway show, it just feels like everyone's, again, that's why Pirago Guy is a cool character.
We got to talk about Pirago Guy
in the show. He's like representative of the community. Like, they're scraping by, like they're just getting by. Like, it's, you know, it's like they barely have any money. Everyone's like working paycheck to paycheck, but like you don't really get that in this at all. Like there are some shots in the opening that are like of like dishwashers and like janitors, and it's like, oh, these are going to be like sequences, and it's like they never show up again. And apparently those are
people, I think I read, that like actually live and work in Washington Heights.
That's cool.
That's actually pretty sick.
That's cool. Good job, John. John M. Chu. Well done.
Yeah, good job, John. And there's a lot of like, I feel like we're like really like going in on this movie, but there are a lot of good, fun things in this movie. I just think like, you know, I everyone's been saying how like great it was and stuff, and you know, like maybe we'll just say our two cents.
Yeah, to be clear, you know, just to make it completely explicit, I don't hate this movie. I think it's an okay movie. I just am so passionate about the source material that like I'm getting worked up because like it is one of these singular media texts of all of my friendships and relationships, and like it's the thing that I come back to all the time. Like it's the thing. Like, Jack, you and I loved How I Met Your Mother. We've watched that show so many times.
That was a bonding thing for us.
Exactly. And then all three of us, we love In the Heights. We sing it in the car all the time. We get hyped to it. It is sort of the soundtrack, and this is crazy because I'm just a white guy, but like this is the power of the show, is like it is almost the soundtrack of my life. It's like that meaningful to me. And so to be slightly disappointed, or I suppose, you know, severely disappointed by the movie is, you know, it's a bummer. It's an okay movie, but I think it could have been better.
And again, we're not going to say things like In the Heights ruined Lin-Manuel Miranda movies forever, like people said about The Last Jedi, which is Last Jedi is at the worst a fine movie.
Yes, I agree.
But it's the same amount of disappointment I feel like people felt with The Last Jedi or like Rise of Skywalker. It's like it's around that level of just like we were envisioning it in our heads and like it wasn't as good as we wanted it to be, and that's fine because we're not gonna be like kill John M. Chu, because John M. Chu's great and he like fucking loves In the Heights. We're about to talk about Piraga Guy.
Yes.
Let's talk about thick Manuel Miranda this movie.
Such a great, I love that he's so out of shape in this movie. I love that like he like has like a like fat guy sexiness, which is so funny. His performance, to be quite honest, is kind of a mixed bag also for me. Like right out the gate, I think he's really funny when he's doing like, he's got the towel working, going from shoulder to shoulder, and he's doing like the little shimmy. And when he's in the bus and he's like really belting it and singing better than I expected him to. I like all that. But then when he's going past Mr. Frosty, he's doing sort of his like Lin-Manuel Miranda, like serious acting. And it was just like, I don't know why we went so serious for a moment there. Like he like does that thing where he like looks down with his head and looks up at Mr. Frosty with his eyes and then looks back down. It's sort of very dramatic. You know what I'm talking about? It's like
absolutely 100%.
And I was like, I don't know about that, but I would love to talk about this because again, I think structurally the Piragua guy is so cool in the show because he comes in right before big stuff is about to happen. It's like a little palate cleanser. You know, he shows up right before just in terms of the songs, he comes in before the club. It's like he signals that something is about to happen. And then he comes in at the end of the show again, right before, I think, when the sun goes down. And so he's sort of signaling the end of both acts. And so I wish that they had bookmarked it like that. He is, you know, spoiler alert, but there is an after credit scene and they do that final song. But I wish that that was more structured into the show because I think that is... I think it's just a fun little structural choice.
Wait, why the fuck they got an after credits scene in this? I didn't even think there was. God damn it, I didn't see it.
Tyler's watching it right now, huh?
I'm about to watch it. God damn it, this is bullshit.
It's at the very, very end of all the credits.
This is literally a Disneyfication of fucking In the Heights. I hate after credits scenes.
Hell yeah, dude.
It's part of the MCU.
It fucking is. It's like at the end, it's like, Piragua guy, we need you to help us with the Avengers Initiative.
Before we go, I kind of just want to talk about the numbers themselves. I know we've already talked a lot about them in various points during this podcast, but like I kind of just want to, you know, specifically go through and talk about favorites and least favorites. I think we'll probably have a little bit of variation here. One of the musical numbers, Tyler, that you already mentioned, you really liked, I really didn't like. So I'm curious to see what worked for you guys and what didn't work for you. Jack, do you want to start with your favorite or maybe one of...
No, I got to think about this. Hold on.
God. Okay, Tyler, do you want to go?
Yeah, I can go. Yeah, and I'll fucking die on this hill, Dan. I know we're going to disagree on this. My favorite music number was Paciencia Fe. I don't like that she died at the end, but I think like it was everything that I wanted it to be in this. I think like it was fun to have her on a subway. It like felt like a musical because like they had a bunch of ensemble dance members that like were recurring throughout it. Yeah. It's personally like what I envisioned what you would do with Paciencia Fe with like, and again, they kind of do it in the Broadway show. So it's not like me coming up with the idea, but just like having these people in like big coats and stuff, like dancing around this old woman, like walking around kind of confused because all old people look confused when they walk.
Wow, another insensitive comment from Tyler Justin Pruyn.
Yeah, here we are. But like, you know what I mean? Like it I think it worked really well and I liked it. My least favorite musical number, not necessarily because I didn't like... Not because I don't like the music or anything, but like the sequencing of it. I think When You're Home is such an incredible number, but like I think the staging of it felt very...
Yeah, it felt flat to me.
Yeah, it was just like really flat. Like there was no like the music's so magical and stuff, and like there's just like not a lot there. Besides like that kind of cool sequence of Nina growing up, that's like cute. But besides that, it's just like it feels like really empty and hollow. And like, I was also expecting them to dance on like the side of a building during that number. And I think that definitely plays a role into it. I won't say it doesn't, but When You're Home is my probably second favorite song in the original Broadway show. So I was highly disappointed by like what it became. And I would say the same about 96,000 too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Jack, you ready?
I think my least favorite is When the Sun Goes Down. Mm-hmm. It just, to me, did not like have any emotional impact because I just didn't feel anything for Benny and Nina's relationship in the whole show. So that to me just like lost so much. And I think my favorite might have been Champagne, just because I love how like simple it is.
Yeah.
And like that's the only one that like really highlights how like incredible Anthony Ramos's voice is. And also like kind of like on the flip side of that coin from When the Sun Goes Down, because I think their relationship is stronger in this one, it hit harder.
No, that's a great point. I think it's also one of the few numbers in this show that like really or in this movie that really, really specifically focuses on character. I think When the Sun Goes Down also is focusing on character, but again, it's like totally getting lost in the spectacle of the whole thing with Champagne. Yeah, that's just them in a room, and I think it's exactly how everyone envisioned it.
I'm giving a quick shout out too to No Me Diga, just because it's hella fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
But why the mannequins moving? You know, it's like
because they really love magical realism.
There's a couple moments where they try to do the magical realism thing and it turns into a horror movie. That's one of them. The other one is in Pacencia y Fe. The other one is in Pacencia y Fe when the lights like flicker like a horror movie and then it transitions into like from the regular subway. You know what I'm talking about?
That was sick. Yeah, I love that part. Holy shit. I was like,
I did not like it. I did not like it at all because it felt like a horror movie. I was like, what the hell just happened? I think that's also
I think we interpret that song differently.
I don't know. It's just because in the Broadway version, it's just very, this is where I talk about like, I wish that the show was more grounded because in the movie version, obviously, like it's kind of colored by the fact that she is dying. So it becomes this magical interpretation of her whole life, like flashing before her eyes. And so like, because I don't like that choice, that colors a lot of it. But I just kind of think that like it loses what the original song was, which is just like this very powerful, because she's like just a tertiary character kind of floating around, like everyone loves her and stuff, but like this is her moment to shine. And it's so simple. It's just an old lady like feeding birds. It's such a simple thing. And she has this, the magic is the ticket, not like what's going on around her.
They also, you know, there's a line in there where they say, as I feed these birds, and she's not feeding any birds.
There's a bunch of lines like that.
There's no mention of her feeding birds.
There's literally so many lines like that in the movie where they just didn't change it. And it's like, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. They mentioned the breadcrumbs in the hand multiple times. And I don't think she ever fed any birds during the movie.
Dan, your favorites though? Your least favorites? And well, we can debate on Pacencia Fe if you want.
That's perfect. I don't know if Pacencia y Fe is my least favorite. It's probably when the sun goes down and Pacencia y Fe are kind of tied, I guess. We've already talked about why it didn't work for us. My favorite though is probably the club, not Blackout, but the club. Like just when they get into the club, and I think that's like pretty much unimpeachable. It's just so much fun. It's lively. It's all of the like showiness that I love about a good musical inside of this like confined, tight space. The characters are kind of clear in this moment, like what they want, what's going on. It's very Usnavi and Vanessa centric, and so you know what's happening, and it's fun. It's also like an excuse to have like it's like an excuse to have a moment where characters are dancing and it makes sense within the reality of the world. It's not magical realism for people to be on the dance floor dancing, you know? So that's like somewhat grounded, even though it becomes heightened at points.
Also, I realized another thing that doesn't make any sense in it though. Also, in the original Broadway show, Benny and Usnavi like have a dance together and it's like super cute and like shows they're friends. They don't do it in this, which kind of sucks. Benny and Usnavi are not friends in this version. It's weird.
Yeah,
like
they just know each other.
But also in that sequence where it's like hey, you like want to dance? Okay, I took my chance. Like that random ensemble guy, like he was awesome.
He was great.
He was like huge, and I was like, this guy can't dance. And then he like breaks it down. And I'm like, okay.
He kind of looked like awesome. Latin American Aaron Donald to me. Like that's what he kind of looked like.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
I also
guy was a tank.
Yeah, he was a tank, and he was awesome. And I love the guy who like opens up the club sequence, and he's like Fiesta in the Heights. He's just like going for it, you know?
Yeah. But I realized when he's like Vanessa like goes off with him. Like literally Benny is in the shot still. Like Benny is in the wide shot of the guy like taking Vanessa out. And then Benny immediately goes like, yo, like who's Vanessa talking to? And it's like, dude, you were right there. You know, you saw the whole thing happen. You're not like, because like I think in the show like he's drinking and like he's like off to the side a bit, but literally he's in the shot like in the film. It's weird.
He's having too good of a time, I think, in that sequence. Also, like he's having fun with the fact that Vanessa's dancing with another guy. He's playing with the cherry. That's like a cute moment, but like he's getting drunk because he just got fired, so he's supposed to be in a real bad mood. I thought that was kind of a lost. I felt like they kind of lost the character of Benny in where he was supposed to be emotionally. That's the only negative I could really say about that scene. But I think John M. Chu did everything is impressive. You know, all the musical sequences are impressive, even though I don't love all of them. And even though I have my gripes with them, I think it's just, you know, I don't know. So there's just character and plot stuff that I can't overcome. I could overcome my personal stylistic differences. I can't overcome those plot and character issues, though. Like, that's just movie critique.
And I will say, John M. Chu has like a great eye for like spectacle and stuff. Like,
and costumes.
If you guys haven't seen Crazy Rich Asians, and costumes, yeah. If you haven't seen Crazy Rich Asians, like, the wedding sequence is literally the most beautiful thing. Like, one of the most beautiful things put to screen. Like, it's fantastic. And like, I was so hyped when I heard he was directing In the Heights. And like, clearly there's love there. And there's a lot of great shots with the bridge in the background. And there's like a few moments where you're like, that is literally the Broadway set brought to life. Like, that's awesome.
My closing thoughts are just that I did like it more when I saw it in the theater. And go see movies in the theaters, because the difference is pretty glaring. I got to see Tenet in theaters when COVID sort of started to slow down a little bit back in, like, I forget when, maybe September. And watching that in theaters was an extremely different experience than watching it on HBO Max. And then watching In the Heights in theaters was a pretty significant difference. You know, it's not going to change the plot. It's not going to change the characters, but it is the way that the movies are supposed to be seen. And especially for a musical where, like, it's so big, there's a lot of small character moments that came through a lot clearer when I saw it in the theaters. So I would just ask everyone to go check it out in theaters if you're intending on checking it out, and go check out A Quiet Place 2 and the James Bond movie when that comes out. Just go see movies in theaters, because I think that is a superior viewing experience. And I really care about movies and the movie theater going experience.
I'm very happy that people got to make something that they were so passionate about and that they are so proud of, because that's all I want, is people just to make stuff that they actually care about instead of some of the garbage we get nowadays.
Totally. And I'll end also on a positive note. I'm really happy that a lot of people love this movie and it has like a lot of buzz. Yeah. Okay. So this has been the Nothing Notable podcast. Thank you so much for listening. What did you think of In the Heights? Was it awesome? Was it swag? Or was, other things?
Awesome or swag?
Or whatever. I don't know. I've been Tyler.
I've been Jack.
And I've been Daniel.
And we'll see you around for the next installment.